The City of Newton held a meeting with the Massachusetts Department of Housing and Community Development, Catholic Charities, and Mark Development about turning Hotel Indigo into a temporary emergency assistance family shelter. Here are some of the highlights from that meeting. You can also watch the entire meeting on newtv.org.
We're famous here in Newton for having 13 villages. Well, it's taking quite a few villages that you're seeing represented on this screen in the form of state agencies, a private company, a nonprofit, and city departments to come together to provide additional emergency family housing. And I not only think this is an important responsibility of all of us, but for us here in Newton, I think it's really a privilege to help parents and children at a really difficult time in their lives. And I so look forward to working with our community and all the people on this screen to welcome them and support them.
This is a really dynamic partnership we formed here to support families in need. And I am so grateful to live in Massachusetts, where our policy choices mean families are not forced to sleep in cars or tents when they find themselves without a safe place. But the reality is that we have many more housing insecure neighbors than those who enter our shelter system. Thousands of students across our state report living in overcrowded spaces, couch surfing, or other unstable situations. Our housing crisis is not new, but we are seeing the problem rolls downhill. And so we have a record number of families facing homelessness, and it is increasingly hard for families to exit shelter, leading our overall shelter numbers to continue to rise. And right now, our shelter system is in crisis. Unfortunately, some of this is bigger than us. We need Congress to enact immigration reform, but we do have a responsibility to ensure eligible families have immediate access to shelter. Now, January of 2023, we saw a 70% increase in new families entering shelter compared to the year before. 70% increase. We are working closely with our partners across state government to address these families' short and long-term needs and how we can best address this housing crisis. But we also understand that individual cities and towns may not have the resources or specialized services to manage the needs of new families, from educational to public safety concerns. And I want to make it clear that we are doing everything we can at the state level to make this transition as seamless as possible. Here in Newton, we have the next 4 to 5 months to ensure we can welcome families to the former Hotel Indigo, and I'm confident in our teams at the city and state to do that.
Catholic Charities is one of the largest providers of social services in Massachusetts. We direct our services to those in need, and we do it with compassion and with respect. Our footprint goes as north as Haverhill. We have operations as far north as Haverhill, as well as far south as Brockton. We are governed, or we govern ourselves, I should say, how we organize ourselves is through 4 core services. Basic needs, which has to do with food pantries of food, or once the more popular term is dealing with the issue of food insecurity, behavioral health counseling, family and youth services is another core service area, childcare, after school programs, camps, that kind of thing, as well as a service line, adult education and workforce development. We see adult education and workforce development as 2 sides of the same coin. And finally, we have our refugee and immigrant services. Catholic Charities is one of the few federally, federally recognized resettlement agencies in the country. In that line of business, we also provide legal services, interpretive services, and a host of other things that we do there.
every night we are providing shelter to 190 men, women, and children in the greater Boston area. And every day we're providing meals, counseling, group work, housing assistance, and anything that we can do to help our families move into their permanent housing within the next few months. We keep our volunteers busy every day with watching the children on the playgrounds and working with them, doing homework and assisting them also with their housing. And the key is that the volunteers is in many of our programs are always the backbone of what we do within the community. So our shelters are listed here on the slide. We have 3 family shelters, in 2 of them in the city of Boston, 1 up in Lowell, our emergency shelter for women in Union Square, Somerville, and the treatment program, which is here in Newton at Our Lady Help of Christians Parish campus, where we have 11 women and children as the women are undergoing counseling and treatment for addiction.
The proposed family emergency shelter in Newton will house 59 families, as our mayor has said. The families every day will be provided allergen-aware meals on site. We will also have on site 24/7 security and fully trained shelter staff. For the hotel's common spaces, we are envisioning a computer lab or a homework space, a children's playroom or a play space actually operated by Horizons for Homeless Children, meeting and conference rooms. Based upon the outpouring of offers from the community already, we are anticipating a robust volunteer program and will have a volunteer coordinator on staff. Educational programming that adheres to a rapid rehousing model will be provided for all the families. Each family will participate in case management and activities geared to assist them obtain and sustain permanent housing. These will include financial literacy, parenting skills, employment, and work skills training.
First of all, Newton has a long, strong history of supporting students in shelters. And all districts in the Commonwealth have had students who are homeless at some point. In many cases, the student situation may seem largely invisible to the bordering communities. Based on the data that we have from the Department of Community and Housing Development, we expect approximately 1 school-aged child per family in this shelter. Many of these families who enter the shelters might have a school-aged children who are enrolled in a district outside of Newton. The school in the other district is referred to as the Student School of Origin. Under the McKinney-Vento law, students have the right to stay enrolled in their school of origin. Therefore, not all of the school-aged children in the shelter will necessarily be enrolled in Newton Public Schools. It is our job at DESE to work very, very closely with the state agencies and the provider and the school district to make sure that our students are enrolled in school and transported to their school of origin as soon as possible. It is always in the forefront of our minds when we're working with our homeless students that we understand that student privacy, including their living arrangements, are protected by federal laws. And keep in mind that the students and the families who live in these shelters in hotels are going through very difficult times in their lives. So when we're dealing with these students, we take very care to make sure that they are felt welcome. And I know that Newton has done that over the years. So I want to thank the residents of Newton and the local officials who do that every single day. I would like to talk to you about some opportunities for additional funding to support this shelter in your schools. The governor was very signed in on March 29th, the supplemental budget, which will help Hotel Indigo. This supplemental budget will reimburse the host district, like Newton, more quickly for costs associated with educating their children in the new shelters. Otherwise, Newton would have had to wait much longer for the funding for these students to be incorporated in their state educational aid. As always, districts are reimbursed for transportation through the McKinney-Vento Homeless Student Transportation. And we are grateful again for the governor's commitment, and she has proposed a significant increase in the funding of this line item in her House One budget, I'm sorry. And then lastly, there is also an emergency support grant, which DESE has provided for students placed in these shelters, again, like Hotel Indigo, which provides $1,000 per student for immediate needs, such as laptops, school supplies, tutoring, and other supports identified as the district. We are committed at DESE to support the Department of Housing and Community Development as they coordinate with districts on family placements, and obviously work with our partners at the school every single day.
I am pleased to be here this evening to talk about certainly the wraparound and the support that we are prepared to provide for our schools, our families, and most importantly, those students that will cross our doors. We immediately put together our team, I want to say in late February, when the mayor notified us of this possibility. We continue to discuss and prepare ways that we will provide, as we always do, a welcoming, inclusive academic environment, and we will be able to, again, meet the needs of all of the students that come to the Newton Public Schools.
We have local examples, obviously, educational institutions such as LaSalle and Ward 4 and Boston College. We have other nonprofits in the city as well, but the segment of the Dover Amendment that would apply has to do with, and I'm just going to paraphrase, no zoning ordinance or bylaw shall prohibit, regulate, or restrict the use of land for educational purposes on land owned or leased by a nonprofit educational corporation, provided, and here's the part I was talking about before, that such land or structures may be subject to reasonable regulations concerning the bulk and height of structures, determining yard sizes, lot area, setbacks, open space, parking, and building coverage requirements, which is what I alluded to earlier.
The primary goal here is not simply to put a roof over the people's heads, but it's to help people get the skills they need so they can move from the temporary housing into permanent housing and also maintain the permanent housing. So the educational aspect is really the fulcrum of the program.
The Ward 4 counselors have asked that when we do actually get the formal building permit application, we hold a community meeting, which is typically what we do in the case of a Dover protected use coordinated through the ward counselors. We will do that in short order once we get an application. So we'll hold a separate meeting in addition to tonight.